Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:06 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Let's talk about these terror attacks happening in the country. It's not just what we saw in New Orleans, not just what we saw in Las Vegas, but also in late October, there was a terror attack in Chicago as an illegal foreign national opened fire on a Jewish man and got into an exchange with police and paramedics. For more on the status of that case and what we can learn from it, I want to bring in Todd Bensman now. He's a senior national security fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies and the author of the book Overrun, How Joe Biden Unleashed the Greatest Border Crisis in U.S. History. Todd, good to have you back with us, sir.
Great to be here. Thank you.
First, would you give us a rundown of who Sidi Mohammed Abdullahi is and what took place in October?
Sure. What we know about him, which is not a lot, we know a lot more about the New Orleans attacker in one day than we know about Sidi in 2 months.
Yes.
But he crossed we know that he crossed the U.S. southern border from Mexico in March of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And he's from Mauritania, 22 years old. We've had a lot of Mauritanians come into the country over the border, close to 20,000 of them as of the end of 2023. A very popular trip for Mauritanians. So he makes his way to Chicago, as some 50,000 illegal immigrants have. Once they're released, he gets released right away with an order to appear before ICE. Millions of people have gotten that. A year and a half later, he conducts this terror attack, a very well-planned jihadi attack on an Orthodox neighborhood. Shoots an Orthodox Jewish man in the back, for starters. Gun jams, disappears. Cops come out to respond to 911 calls.
Mm-hmm.
And when they come out, he attacks them, trying to up his body count. Big gun battle goes on for a long time. He's moving in and out. He's got some kind of tactical understanding about how to bob and weave. He's taking pot shots at neighbors, but ultimately, and he's shooting at firefighter paramedics who are trying to load his first victim into the ambulance, who survived, and trying to kill him as well and them. Shoots a bunch of holes in the ambulance. And then finally, the police shoot him down and wound him. And the state of Illinois, not the FBI, oddly, charges him with terrorism under the state terrorism statute. Probably the first time that's ever been used. He gets arraigned initially in November, and around November 30, he hangs himself in jail. There's been very little, so there's not going to be a trial. There's been very little media coverage beyond the big turns of the screw on this case.
Mm-hmm.
But he does, it's a significant terror attack in my view, because this is a scenario that the intelligence community and FBI Director Christopher Wray have been warning us about for many, many months now, that people crossing the border from countries of terrorism interest might pop off here inside the country, especially if they're mad about Gaza and the war in Gaza, which apparently this individual was. They found all kinds of pro-Hamas, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic jihad propaganda on his cell phone. He was wearing a yellow vest, reflective vest, which is what all the pro-Hamas demonstrators around the world are wearing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a terror attack, according to the state of Illinois.
Yes.
and it's the first one of its kind. And seems to me like we should be thinking a lot about this,
Yes.
trying to learn what we can
So
from it so that we don't have another one.
So he's from Mauritania, which is a country in Africa. It's not connected by land to the United States. Mauritania, I don't know a lot about Mauritania, but I do know that the concerns about terrorism and even slavery within Mauritania are very high. He comes across our southwest border, and the Biden administration just releases him into the country?
Yes, because remember that there is a protocol. I mean, most people probably don't know this, that when the numbers are normal that are coming across, when somebody comes in from a country like Mauritania, they get tagged with the label special interest alien, which is basically puts them into secondary inspection by intelligence officers or FBI agents to try to figure out what they're all about. They do eyeball to eyeball interviews and go through their pocket trash. But during the Biden administration, so many were coming in from those countries that the system was completely overwhelmed and they just let everybody through. And it looks like this Mauritanian and probably all the Mauritanians, the 20,000 of them that have come over the border, probably were just waved through. There's no possible way they could have done interviews with that many to try to figure out what they're about. You know, are you predisposed? Do you have the virus? Who are you and what does your pocket trash tell us? And how can our intelligence allies overseas help us learn more about you, et cetera? None of that has been happening for the last 4 years because there are just too many. And I think that's what happened here. They waved them through. Maybe they did a fingerprint check and ran them through the databases and didn't find anything, which doesn't mean anything at all. That's pretty shallow. And, a year and a half later, he's shooting up a neighborhood, people cowering in their homes with their children and pets.
Yes.
Shell casings littering the streets, and a Jewish guy bleeding in the street, and him bleeding in the street too eventually.
So how dangerous, how big is the threat in your view, Todd Bensman, right now of more terror threats like this?
I go with the intelligence community threat assessment. So DHS every year puts out a public threat assessment. It's the intelligence community's collective belief in what the top threats are. The 2024 and the new one from 2025 both warn about terrorists crossing the southern border and what that means. And FBI Director Christopher Wray on numerous occasions in the last year has been in front of Congress warning that the southern border and what's coming in from the other side
Yes.
are a major terrorism threat. And I regard those guys as my betters, and I believe what they have to say there.
But, well, I have a low regard for Christopher Wray, but I do hear, I have heard him say that on a routine basis, which leads me to wonder the following thing, Todd Bensman. If that's the case, why are they allowing it to happen? So normally, what we see happen with terrorist attacks in the United States, terrorist attack takes place, and then the United States government infringes the civil liberties of law-abiding Americans as a way to redress the terror attack. Rather than if you're saying all the alarms are going off, all the lights are blinking about our southern border, why aren't they locking down the southern border? Why are they aiding and abetting all of this foreign migration into the United States?
Because that national security measure conflicts with the other agenda of the White House, the Biden White House, which is to let everybody in, to get as many people in as possible, to manage the border, to do nothing to block up and cause congestion at the border. In other words, get them all through as quickly as possible, regardless of public safety or national security concerns. And so I don't believe that they ever wanted to do the right thing down there at the border with people coming from Muslim majority countries. And they didn't. And in fact, even after this Chicago terror, named a terror attack, charged as a terror attack by the state, ever really got FBI attention. The FBI, you could see, absolutely took over the case in New Orleans. We just saw that. They took over the case in
Yes.
Las Vegas. They always take over.
A little bit of disruption to this call. All right.
Presidential election.
Yep.
You didn't see the FBI anywhere near that thing. And to this day, you haven't seen them anywhere near that case.
Yeah, you broke up, Todd.
Yeah.
You broke up a little bit there, but to your point, you saw the FBI crawl all over these terror cases in New Orleans, in Vegas, but because this attack took place just before the presidential election, I think you just said, and you didn't see the FBI anywhere near it.
That's right. I think that the public safety duty conflicted with this political agenda at the time.
Yeah.
Just before the presidential election, you had Trump out there on the stump. Now, Trump did mention the Chicago attack in his final North Carolina rally. Mm-hmm. He talked about it, but nobody ever quoted it. Nobody has ever quoted that, or really, it received very little national attention at all. Nobody knocked on any doors. I decided to go to Chicago because he hanged himself, and now there's not going to be a trial that would illuminate a lot of the unanswered questions.
Yes. I hate when the phone. Yeah. Hey, I'm sorry. Hey, Todd. For some reason your phone keeps breaking up, unfortunately. But this is, this is so important. And so in other words, the FBI is operating in a political way ahead of the election. So therefore, it doesn't place public safety as its highest priority. Instead, it was about preventing any sort of political damage to Kamala Harris.
I think that's what happened with this particular case. And then in the aftermath of the election, people kind of moved on because Trump had won, and
right.
It was sort of distracting, but it's never too late to go back. Now we've got a deportation program about to start up in Chicago. Tom Homan is saying, I'm going to Chicago on day one, and I'm going to force this down your throat.
Right.
Because Chicago's saying, we're not going to participate in deporting anybody from this city. We're going to block you at every possible way. And this is like after this big terror attack by an immigrant.
Yes. So what do you make of that impulse by these lefties? It's not what their people want, I would presume. I've seen all of these alderman meetings, these people keep showing up, residents of Chicago, black, white, and every other color, and saying, hey, I don't want this for my community. Get control of this. Why would Chicago continue to fight for illegals, fight to be a sanctuary city? Why wouldn't they fight for the interests of the voters?
Well, if the media and public officials were more emphatic about this terror attack that just happened, carried out by one of these illegal immigrants, an actual terror attack on Jews in Chicago, on the whole community, it freaked them all out, sent shockwaves through that entire Orthodox community that to this day they're scared. Maybe they'd be a little less reluctant to participate in deportation operations. This is a good thing for Chicago, and to my dying day, I'll never understand why any elected official would block the removal of criminal aliens and terrorists from their community. Who would leave them in your community and flick them on your own people? Who would do that?
No,
I'll never understand it.
That's right. Well, you'd have to hate your own community to take that position, and I worry that so many of them do. I hate that, but it's true. Todd Bensman from the Center for Immigration Studies, thank you for constantly digging in on this subject. Happy New Year. Great to have you with us today. All right, to the phones we go. Tom is calling in from Florida on line 2. He wants to talk about Speaker Mike Johnson and whether or not he'll have that job again tomorrow. Hello, Tom.
Hello. One thing that bothers me about what he did was he had promised several several of his cohorts in the House that he would not bring a bill up without 72 hours to to read it before they voted.
Mm-hmm.
And the other was, as Speaker of the House, he could have brought that bill up last month.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, in fact, you've just taking us back to mid-December and all of the chaos around this ridiculous, 1,500-page continuing resolution, which means it wasn't a continuing resolution. It was packed with all sorts of new stuff. Mike Johnson had promised that there would be an open process for the legislation. That's not the case. Most members hadn't seen it. That the committee chairs would be involved. That's not the case. Most committee chairs weren't involved in it. That there wouldn't be a Christmas omnibus at all. And it turns out, it's right before Christmas. And that they would have 72 hours to read it, which they didn't. So do members have reasons to be upset with how things are going? Yeah, definitely. Do they need to be cognizant of the gigantic picture involved here about what it takes to pass Trump's agenda, the one that was just voted for? Absolutely. But this is why I'm not that bothered by, as I put it earlier, them rolling up the newspaper and kind of hitting Mike Johnson in the nose, because I think it's worth rattling a cage every so often if it can help improve outcomes in the future.
Exactly. What I'm thinking about, if we get the new representatives in, and then they whip for the votes to see if they have a consensus that they're all willing to vote for, and then once you've done that, you move to vacate the speakership.
Then you move to vacate the speaker?
They're all going to agree on early on.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you've got a plan. You want to be Speaker of the House, Tom?
Hell no.
Well, it was worth a shot. I figured maybe you want to do it. All right. Hey, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. No, you're right. Speaker Johnson has some things to answer for, which is why he was meeting with members today, the guys who are being holdouts at the moment, and everybody's acting all happy and cheerful right now that things are going to go really well tomorrow. We will see if they do. Let us see here. William is in Manassas, line 3. William, good afternoon to you, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon. Hey, so with the two terror attacks, the one, with the Tesla and then the one with, the truck drive-through. Yeah. So I know that a lot of people are talking about how I believe they were both Muslim. I don't know. I'm not sure about the Tesla guy.
I don't think so.
That they were in the same.
I don't think the Tesla guy was a Muslim.
Okay. All right. But they were in the same unit, and then the again, the guy who drove the truck, whatever, he pledged support to ISIS, and I think it's important to recognize that while that individual in New Orleans, while he was radicalized and was definitely pro-terrorism, that he did, from what I understand, he doesn't appear to be part of any larger network, and so
that's what they're
even
saying.
if he might have believed himself the ISIS, but it wasn't as if ISIS came all the way from Syria to attack us. And there definitely is a danger of radicalization with, individuals in the United States becoming radicalized, becoming, lone wolf terrorists. But I think it's important that we, we don't overreact and just think, we just need to do more stuff in the Middle East and, send more troops and more money, because I think that would that wouldn't do anything about the lone terror.
And if that's your reflex, what has that done for us in the past? Hasn't exactly worked out. We've created a lot of power vacuums that have been filled by even worse terrorism. So maybe take a beat and think it through. The other piece is we can't rule out, of course, international terrorism crossing our border, because all sorts of people on terror watch lists have been doing that. So I think square one is law enforcement in the United States, securing the border, and prioritizing the things that actually protect Americans instead of making things more chaotic. I'm with you on that. That's a good impulse, William. All right, hey, coming up, all the latest that we're learning, including about the guy in Vegas who was in that Tesla, learning new information at this hour. They say he shot himself in the head before the explosion went off. His body was burned beyond recognition, they say, but somehow they were able to get his ID and his passport off of him. Is your passport fireproof? I don't even understand what that means. 529. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:35 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We now have a name for the suspect in the Las Vegas Cybertruck bombing out in front of the Trump Hotel there in Vegas. It's Master Sergeant Matthew Allen Livelsberger. Jackie Heinrich at the Fox News Channel today saying that he's active duty. That's what an Army spokesman says. He was an active duty Special Forces Operations Sergeant who was on leave from Germany, where he was serving with the 10th Special Forces Group. Master Sergeant Matthew Allen Livelsberger enlisted as an 18X and served in the active duty Army from January 2006 to March 2011. Livelsberger then joined the National Guard from March 2011 to July 2012, followed by the Army Reserve from July 2012 to December 2012. He entered the active duty Army in December of 2012 and was a U.S. Army Special Operations soldier. Additionally, U.S. Army Special Operations Command can confirm that Livelsberger was assigned to the command and on approved leave at the time of his death. U.S. ASOC is in full cooperation with federal and state law enforcement agencies, but as a matter of policy, will not comment on ongoing investigations. Okay, so that's the update there. So this guy's an active duty soldier. He was an active duty soldier who died inside of that Cybertruck. Now, they say that his body was unrecognizable because it was burned to a crisp because of the explosion and the ensuing fire inside of the vehicle. But they also say that he apparently sustained a gunshot wound to the head. They found a gun at his feet, a handgun at his feet. Here's the Las Vegas police sheriff today, Kevin McMahill, describing this.
Now, further complicating this identification of this individual, we also discovered through the coroner's office that the individual had sustained a gunshot wound to the head prior to the detonation of the vehicle. One of the handguns was found at his feet inside of the vehicle.
All right. So that's what they say. Although they did say they were able to identify him based on a passport and a military identification. Where were they? If his body was burned beyond recognition, how does a passport and an identification, I don't know about you, my driver's license is plastic. A military ID card is plastic. I have no idea where it was kept in the vehicle, but they found it, and they were able to identify him based on that. The sheriff said that he was grateful to Elon Musk for his support because apparently, typical Elon Musk. As soon as everything went down with the Tesla Cybertruck, well, Musk turned to his own engineers and got his whole company mobilized to say, okay, what kind of data do we have on the truck? As you know, probably by now, perhaps you don't, but these Teslas are computers. They're traveling. All cars are, but the Teslas to a greater extent. They're traveling computers with unbelievable contact with the company, and the company has access to the vehicle, and they have statistics on how the vehicle was operating. Because remember, in the early hours here, this looked like, what if it was just an electric vehicle explosion out in front of the Trump Hotel? The left was raving about this. They thought this was the funniest thing ever. That's perfect. Symbolism, blah, 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 blah. They were enjoying it. And so Elon Musk gets his team looking into it. Hey, what happened here? And he said, and Elon himself shared their findings, which are, there was no problem with the internals of the vehicle. All of the telemetry looked just fine, he said, in that, in fact, this was the result of explosives that were inside of the vehicle. And honestly, if you just watch the video of the car exploding, or at least the parts of it that exploded and the ensuing explosions around the car, you can instantly see there are fireworks involved. This does not take a trained eye. You can see fireworks pouring out of the vehicle and bouncing off the ground. This is not your typical explosion. And the Las Vegas police sheriff issued a note of thanks to Elon Musk for his help.
Have the MPD been in contact with Tesla Code to get analytics from the vehicle cameras?
Yes, actually, I have to thank Elon Musk specifically. He gave us quite a bit of additional information in regards to how the vehicle was locked after it exploded due to the force of the nature of the force from the explosion, as well as being able to capture all of the video from the Tesla charging stations across the country, and he sent that directly to us. So I appreciate his help on that.
Yeah. So on that point about the left making a lot of fun of all of this, they thought this was the greatest thing ever. Meanwhile, it was really obviously somebody probably died in that vehicle, or it's very likely that somebody could have died in that vehicle, at least in the early hours. And of course, a guy did. This soldier did. The left was having a great time. MSNBC's Christopher Hayes kind of acknowledged this as the news was developing yesterday.
Let's talk about Las Vegas, because this has been a sort of interesting development. You know, the images of the Cybertruck parked outside the Las Vegas Trump property went viral. You know, sort of, I think people thought it was an accident and that no one was hurt. And so there was a sort of bizarre symbolism in that it was a Cybertruck, it was out Trump. As it's developed, it seems that this is being taken far more seriously.
This is him trying to get his audience to settle the hell down. Stop posting on social media that this is wonderful.
What have we learned about what authorities know and how they're investigating this?
Right, Chris. So according to the reporting of myself, my colleagues Andrew Blankstein and Kelly O'Donnell, right now, 3 senior U.S. law enforcement officials say that this explosion of a Tesla Cybertruck, kind of in the portico there where you saw that smoke rising from in front of Trump's property in Las Vegas, is being investigated, at least initially, as a potential act of terrorism, and that it was, quote, intentional.
Yeah, one would think, given all of the available evidence. It looks intentional, and it looks like terrorism. And it doesn't surprise me that somebody might choose a political message like this. They blow up an Elon Musk vehicle in front of a Trump hotel to send a message. Not surprised at that act of terrorism. It's not surprised, but continuously appalled. That's where we are. Now, officials were speaking on this today, and as I told you, this was an active duty soldier, 37 years old, by the name of Matthew Livelsberger, who was a Green Beret. And the officials are pointing out that the level of sophistication when it came to the bomb itself wasn't that high. That there was something very amateurish, actually, about the bombing. Take a listen today as officials in Vegas talk about this.
I just want to be careful with my language here, but the level of sophistication is not what we would expect from an individual with this type of military experience. That most of the materials inside that test.
This is an ATF official, by the way. His name's Kenny Cooper, Assistant Special Agent in charge from the ATF.
So that the materials inside that Tesla were fuel to help fuel a greater explosion. But it's too early to answer any question as if there was sophisticated connectivity to those components to make it ignite in the way that it did.
Okay. All right. So just that's another piece of information. This is a guy who you would expect to have more sophistication in terms of how you would construct an explosive in order to have an impact, and yet it demonstrated a lack of sophistication, said the ATF guy, not commensurate with the amount of military experience that he seems to have. Also, if you were looking to cause damage, you picked the wrong truck to do it because the outer shell is hard steel. And the truck basically fired its contents up into the air, but didn't blast out from the sides, didn't cause damage to the people and structures around the vehicle. And in fact, if you watch the original video of the truck exploding, there's a guy carrying a rollaway bag, an overhead luggage size bag, who's, I want to say, 10, 15 feet behind the car. And he's just standing on the curb, presumably waiting for a ride. When the explosion goes off, he turns tail and he runs away from it, as human beings would. And he seems okay. He seems okay. That's because of the integrity of the vehicle itself. It was maintained. The inside of course, got destroyed. The windows got blown out. But fortunately for the people who were there, it was only the guy who was inside the vehicle who was killed by this. So it's just kind of an amazing thing, what happened with this car. Now, we've got additional updates on his views towards Trump. So the UK Independent, picked up by the Daily Mail as well, claims that Matthew Livelsberger loved Trump. Loved Trump. Now, if you love Trump, do you go and you blow up a Tesla in front of the Trump Hotel in Vegas? What's going on? Is it a setup? Did somebody set this guy up and make it appear? Is he a patsy? Make it appear that he was the one who carried out some sort of terror attack in front of that hotel. We don't know. We don't know if the investigation continues. But here's what The Independent says today. The active duty Green Beret who was driving a Tesla Cybertruck that blew up outside the Trump International Hotel, Las Vegas, on New Year's Day was, quote, a 100% patriot, his bewildered uncle said Thursday. That's today. Matthew Livelsberger, 37, quote, was like a Rambo type, for lack of a better word, said Dean Livelsberger to The Independent. Dean, whose older brother is Livelsberger's father, Roger, himself an Air Force veteran who served in Vietnam, said his nephew loved the Army. Quote, he used to have all the patriotic stuff on Facebook. He was 100% loving the country, he continued. He loved Trump, and he was always a very, very patriotic soldier, a patriotic American. It's one of the reasons he was in Special Forces for so many years. It wasn't just one tour of duty. Dean Livelsberger said he was aware of the explosion in Vegas, but had not yet been made aware that Matt, as he called him, had been named as the culprit until The Independent contacted him for comment. At first, Dean assumed the explosion had been caused by one of those big lithium, quote, one of those big lithium batteries that short-circuited or something, he said. He was relieved that the blast only caused 7 minor injuries and didn't kill anyone else. But he added the amateurish construction of the explosive device, an array of propane tanks, fireworks, and camping fuel, left him with a slew of additional questions. This is the uncle. Quote, Matt was a very skilled warrior, and he would be able to make, if it was him, and if he did this, he would have been able to make a more sophisticated explosive than using propane tanks and camping fuel. He was what you might call a super soldier. If you ever read about the things he was awarded and the experience he had, some of it doesn't make sense. When he had the skills and ability to make something more, let's say, efficient, his skills were enormous from what he had been taught in the military. They say with Livelsberger's skills, his uncle suggested, his nephew, quote, could have fashioned a bomb that would have obliterated half of that hotel if he seriously wanted to hurt others. He said, quote, think of Oklahoma City. McVeigh was just a normal soldier, not a Tier 1 operator like Matt, said the uncle. The Independent points out that Livelsberger was in the U.S. Army for 19 years, 18 of which were in the elite special forces. He was currently stationed in Germany, and he was on leave in Colorado Springs when he rented the Cybertruck and drove to Nevada, according to law enforcement sources. They say the truck blew up just a few hours after Shamsuddin Jabbar rammed that other truck, the Ford F-150 Lightning, into New Year's Day revelers in New Orleans, killing at least 15 people. Jabbar, 42, was also an Army veteran who was posted to the same base as Livelsberger. They're talking about Fort Bragg. That's a massive Army base. If I don't know if this is the case, but I assume if you've been a soldier, there's a very high likeliness that you were stationed at Fort Bragg. I think we can't make too much specifically out of them both being stationed at Fort Bragg. But maybe. They say he also served in Afghanistan around the same time that Livelsberger did. Investigators are looking into a possible link between the two men who both rented their vehicles for the same car share service, Turo, but so far they have found no direct connection between the two. And that's what everybody's saying today. They're sticking with this now. They're saying we don't see a connection between these two, despite all of the commonalities in terms of how they rented their vehicles, the fact that they had IEDs, the fact that they caused chaos in American cities, all of those things very much matter. Very much matter. Let me see. Lisa is calling in from Falls Church on line 2. Lisa, good afternoon. You are on the Vince Colonnese Show.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
I was thinking that this looks like a setup because this guy was shot before the detonation, and that's suspect. The fact that he was a Trump supporter suggests that he wouldn't be in front of the Trump hotel blowing things up or trying to. And like you said, the bomb was very sloppily made, amateurish, right? To me, everything points to a setup. He could have easily, somebody could have, thrown him in the vehicle, and it could have self-driven to the hotel and then blown up remotely, right? That's a possibility.
So I don't own a Tesla. Do you own a Tesla, Lisa?
I don't, but I have a lot of friends that do.
So here's what I'm seeing. I've heard this theory today. I've seen this theory on social media that maybe someone shot him, put him in the car with a gun, and sent them on self-drive mode all the way to the hotel. The thing that
correct.
Tesla owners are claiming that would disprove that theory or work against it is that the self-driving feature of the car monitors whether the driver is paying attention to the road. You have to maintain your attention on the roadway in order for the vehicle to do that. Now, I don't own a Tesla. I can only speak to what other people are saying on this subject. But according to Tesla's own website, they claim that the driver needs to pay attention to the road, their surroundings, and other road users in order for the autopilot feature to work.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, anyway, the point is,
I had not heard that.
The point is, you and I are very, very open-minded on what the hell happened here. Like, how did this go down in the first place?
It does not sound like he did this. It doesn't sound like he did this intentionally.
I don't know. And here's the other piece. Here's the other piece. We don't know the uncle's relationship with the kid, with his nephew. We have no idea how close they actually are. The guy may have been pro-Trump but turned anti-Trump for some reason. I've seen claims today that the guy was wearing, there's pictures of, I think, of him wearing pro-Ukraine merchandise and arguing on behalf of more American involvement in the Ukraine war. So, in other words, there's a lot of noise right now. So we'll see. But at the moment, the update from The Independent is they claim he liked Trump. He was a big Trump fan. It doesn't stand to reason that a guy who likes Trump is going to jump into a Tesla Cybertruck and then go and shoot himself and detonate a bomb in front of a Tesla hotel. That doesn't pass the sniff test.
No, it doesn't really. Something's up. We're missing some pieces, obviously, right?
Big time. Thank you, Lisa. It's
smart. Hopefully we'll get them.
I hope so, too. I really do. Lisa, thanks for that call. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I'm glad she brought up that self-driving theory because I've seen it bandied about, but apparently the Teslas require active engagement in order to use them in that way. So the Sugar Bowl, which was supposed to take place yesterday in New Orleans, was delayed until today. It started at 3 o'clock. They're in halftime right now. It's 13-3 Notre Dame, in case you're wondering, over the Georgia Bulldogs at the moment. But the game began today with a message from the head of Allstate, because it's the Allstate Sugar Bowl, reacting to the terror attack this week in New Orleans. Listen to the message from Allstate. Here's the message today.
Welcome to the Allstate Sugar Bowl. Wednesday, tragedy struck the New Orleans community. Our prayers are with the victims and their families. We also need to be stronger together by overcoming an addiction to divisiveness and negativity. Join Allstate working in local communities all across America to amplify the positive, increase trust, and accept people's imperfections and differences. Together, we win.
What is this? So the message, a guy inspired by ISIS to kill Americans. The message from Allstate today is, there's just too much divisiveness out there. And that's the key. That's the ticket. A 30-second ad scolding people to be more loving to one another. That'll solve it. What were they thinking at Allstate when they put this thing together? Whose idea was this? Is this the same marketing department that decided that Dylan Mulvaney should be featured in Bud Light advertising? Who did this? That's crazy. This reminds me of, when Michelle Obama posted a photo of herself with a sad face and a hashtag that said, Save Our Girls. Remember that? It was like, and it was not about it wasn't about girls in the United States. It wasn't about American girls. It was about girls who were being absolutely savaged by Boko Haram in Nigeria. But how does you posting a photo of yourself with a sad face help their plight? Kind of seems like it's about you, actually. Like, that exercise isn't actually about saving anyone. It's about making you seem amazing. Boy, this looks familiar. Way to go, Allstate. Wait, this was so easy. You could have condemned terrorism and encouraged everybody to enjoy the game. Don't let the terrorists win. Instead, they were like, oh, you Americans, you're fighting each other. You need to stop all this divisiveness.